Good morning and welcome to Talking Baseball Australia Live. Baseball's best mate. Time to roll the open in 3, 2, 1. Here we go.
It's Talking Baseball Australia. It's baseball updates you'll really love. The MLB and ABL news you want. With Paul Morgan and Dan Vaughn. It's baseball's best mate all year round. From the batter's box to the mound.
And there we go with that. Sorry about that, folks. Let's unmute Paul. Let's bring him in as well. I'm kind of doing a little shuffle. I kind of moved my desk around. There he is. I moved my desk around a little bit and it's kind of like, you know what it's like? It's like when I go to the West and I jump in a rental car and I remember I'm on the wrong side of the road for me. Kind of the same way. Good morning to you, mate. How are you doing?
Good morning, DB. Yes, you're getting toots in the road, and you're thinking, "God, the locals are friendly," but no, they're not.
Yeah. I just moved the desk around just a little, and a little bit of the gear around it, and I just to pull the curtain back, I put the little audio device in a place that no one else that's for me, but then I moved it, and then I'm kind of like could fish for it blindly, and
yeah.
Anyway, all right, all good. Good morning to you, sir. I've got my coffee this morning.
Yes, good day 5 of a 5-day lockdown here in the West. So it ends at 6 o'clock tonight. So we get our quasi freedoms back, DV. So we're out of that.
Your first post-COVID quarantine lockdown this week. Your first move will be what? What are you gonna do? Just run outside and scream?
Well, I mean, it's sort of relatively, I still walk the dog every day, and of course, masks on now, which is a bit different for us over here. But no, I mean, I think it's been relatively positive. The biggest impact, of course, no baseball tonight. There you go. You get the TTU, the old Red Raiders. Great to see, by the way, Grant Little here this week. From the Adelaide Giants. We've seen him twice. We may see him 3 times in a row, depending on how the cards break. But it was actually good. It was actually, side note to that, it was great to have Guy Belair on the broadcast, who we know Guy who is from Lubbock, Texas, where Texas Tech University's, and the year he was sort of in immigration hell, that he was sort of trying to come back and forth. He spent the year in Lubbock, and that year was when Grant Little was playing for Texas Tech. So. Guy sort of was a big fan of Little at Texas Tech, and I think he's got a bright future. But
he does definitely has a bright future.
The good thing, I texted you as well, DV. But the other day on ESPN over here, the Texas Tech game, I love those hoops kits, those grey kits. Just
the grey, yes, looking sharp. They're looking sharp. Those. Let me pull this down here. Yeah, speaking of, by the way, Guy Belair, who was in the broadcast over the weekend, a little. This is for the real hardcore ABL fans. Did you know? Because I didn't have this one on my Did You Know script, but Guy Belair actually worked his that year he was in kind of limbo.
Yep.
He worked at the same restaurant that my oldest daughter worked. How about that? Orlando's in Lubbock, so he waited tables the same, but the different location. But they didn't. But I'll throw that out there. But yes, Grant Little. If you Adelaide fans, you're watching a guy that's probably going to be in the big leagues. He reminds me a lot watching him play. Now I've not seen him as much as you have in person. I've seen him mostly on Big 12 broadcast and of course on the video with your show, with your broadcast. He has a bit of a Jake Fraley to him. He may be a little more powerful at the plate, but he has a lot of Jake Fraley. I don't know if he's got the pure base running down. When Fraley came to the ABL, he was leaps and bounds ahead of folks as far as base running. I don't know if Grant Little is that far ahead. But I think he's in that same mold. He's a Fraley type, former Perth Heater.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he's quite at the same. I mean, I don't think we'll probably ever see anyone at the ABL level that was at Fraley's base stealing levels when he did it. But Little, I mean, that was a good part, DV, about the last couple of weeks of watching Adelaide and getting like 8 games in a row over here, getting to watch these guys. they got a lot of great prospects. Of course, they had great affiliation they got with the Philadelphia Phillies. But there's Cornelius Randolph. We know he signed for that $3.5 million signing bonus. Philadelphia have a big investment in him. We saw even then, and then looking at those local core guys, the Ricks and Wingrows, the Curtis Meads, the Jordan McCardles, were good to watch multiple times. And again on Adelaide, Van Stencil looked great, Wilkins looked great. I'm really interested to see how they're going to go in this postseason DV, which is around the corner. We assume, probably shouldn't assume because you never really know, but you assume that Perth and Adelaide won't play over here this weekend, just crowd restrictions for COVID. I would think it makes it perhaps not feasible to play, but again, we don't know. So potentially there's baseball tomorrow, potentially not. We'll wait on the official word.
What we do know is there was baseball last night. We're going to get to that in just a moment.
Yes.
And we'll talk about that here on the show, Talking Baseball Australia Live. We're really kind of freelancing today because this has kind of been the theme this year. Lining guest up is always something we can do, but there's been so many moving parts of this season, and it's almost fitting that we have to almost sit tight because even though it's 7 a.m. in the West, it's on the mid-morning on a Friday in the East, and we've seen time and time again things have changed and developed. It looks like, and I think you're right on there, that this is going to be the final round. It was going to be the final round anyway, this mystery round, and that we'll go into this exciting postseason thing, which we'll talk about that in a moment. But we've kind of been we're on pins and needles to a degree for the next move. It'll be only 2 more weeks of this because you got this weekend, the next weekend, and then the championship, and that'll be all done and dusted. But that's kind of where our show has been the last month. We really were hardcore guests and driven in topics, but we've really freelanced a lot because that's what this season's been. This season's been a freelance, and the opportunity is there to freelance, and that's what we've done, and I hope fans have liked it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it seemed like Melbourne was supposed to be here, then Melbourne's not here because of COVID. So I think trying to have any certainty is useless. But look, I think it's really I think first and foremost, and again, we've seen a lot of critics this year, but for them the ABL in general now to get to the end of the road in terms of you're a weekend away from, I think it's the 11th. If that is your postseason starts. I mean, at the end of the day, it's been a phenomenal job to get to this point. Really, I'm sure, a bunch of people lost a lot of money. But
you know what it reminds me of a little bit? Do you ever watch those old World War II movies? They used to do and this was a big American thing, so maybe I'm being American here, but the old the final mission over Europe, and they're going to retire. That bomber crew was going to retire and go home. But they had that one more mission. And that last mission, that plane is shot to hell, right? I mean, it's just it's missing a stabilizer, and you've got a couple of guys that are injured, and you're trying to get over the channel, and you're throwing fuel out. I mean, throwing things out to lighten the load. That's basically what this has been. This has been a ship that's taken on water left and right. I mean, using the nautical thing, and it's in these stormy seas, but at every turn, it doesn't wash ashore. It somehow rights the ship. And keeps flowing along. It's like that. We're to that point now where, this weekend, even a sneeze this weekend is not going to derail the plans. It's just getting to that finish line next weekend, which it looks like that's going to be great to get there. Is there an All-Star game coming? Isn't there an All-Star game coming?
I think there was.
Stuart's asking that. Go ahead.
No, I think there was one plan, but as far as I'm aware, it's been cancelled. But maybe there's I don't know if there's been an official word of that or not. But
well, let's start last night quickly because again, the games went on last night, and I'm happy for the Sydney faithful that did make the ballpark last night. 5-0 win over Melbourne. I mean, it was a real, as far as a game goes, as far as, you had good starting pitching from both. You had timely offense that was clutch in the second, I believe in the 8th inning to pad the lead. It was one of those, it was almost without the crowd, of course, but almost had a playoff atmosphere because obviously Sydney is trying to win to solidify their spot to play in that wild card matchup, which we'll get to that in a few minutes. And then Melbourne's kind of playing on house money. They're up in front. They're the reigning champs. They look to be the number one lock, barring any just major disaster. They should be fine. Well, they would be fine. Even if they got swept, they'd still be percentage points ahead. I believe that's correct. I'd do my math in my head. But anyway, if you watching that ball game last night, it was a classic game. The 5-0 score is not indicative of what that ball game was, because really there was a lot more to it than that. Did you get a chance to? What were your? I guess I know you saw it. What were your thoughts? I mean, Brian Flynn was nails, former big leaguer. I mean, the guy pitched like he got the win and wound up getting a 5-0 loss. Pretty good pitching last night.
Yeah, you're right. It was a good pitching matchup, and then it's just those 3 runs in the bottom of the 8th for Sydney sort of derailed it. But what was good, Lachlan Wells for those back in long relief. I think the thing that surprised me the most, though, we sort of talked about it a bit, was that's a huge opportunity for the Blue Sox fans to come out as well, and to have 431 only turn up to the game it's just disappointing that. That's the crowd you get for when you got the reigning champions and arguably the best team in the league coming up to play. I think it's disappointing that's only the amount of people turn up for the game.
Yeah.
But it looked.
Yeah. I'm going to back you right up on that, and it's a cliff to jump off of. I feel for the Blue Sox faithful. I mean, Adam Dobb has done. I mean, talk about a guy that's been taking every shot possible, and it all began for him back, when they had the first problems with the broadcast back in the early days of the season, and they didn't play for almost a month. They didn't play. I mean, they were stuck at 2-1 or whatever it was, 1-2 or whatever forever. And he has fought through it, been out the front, been vocal, trying to drum up support, and I feel for that group. I was glad to see them get home and get a win. I'm glad to see them get something going. I will just throw this out there. If you're watching us in New South Wales and you are a baseball fan, you need to get your tail to the ballpark this weekend. This is a chance to show that baseball's alive and well in the largest metropolitan area in Australia. I mean, this is a chance to get out there and show that baseball love. I just think it's a great opportunity, and it's something we've talked about, opportunity here, and it's knocking. And there's a chance to really put some folks in the ballpark. Don't forget they had 1,000 in that opening night game against Melbourne, Canberra, opening night. Opportunities right there, so get out there and support those folks. Ethan says, first off, Bob says, would there have been any U.S. primetime games that wasn't for COVID? Probably not, because there would not have been any hub action the way it turned out. There was going to be hub. Now, remember, let's go back to where this thing was going to be originally. You had the Australian conference, you had the 2 conferences with New Zealand being a hub. There was going to be some hub games, but those are more in line for New Zealand television and for the Geelong Korea television market, or the Korean television market. I do believe, though, Bob, there would have probably been some U.S. primetime games in whatever hub there would have been. Remember, the original fixture for most of the teams on Australian soil was home and away like normal, although there was going to be the Adelaide. The Adelaide hub was going to happen regardless. I would imagine they would have done. I mean, I'm guessing. I have no way to know this for sure, but from what I do know, we've talked at length with the guys that make those decisions. My impression is, Bob, is that they were going to have a handful of games on in U.S. friendly time, but the real thing was to have those games on in New Zealand and Korea. That was the real big thing. And the U.S. would have been extra icing on the cake. I do know this, and I said it last week, and that doesn't mean I agree with it, but the idea that there are some folks in the ABL who believe in building the market outside in, meaning from the outside the country back in, meaning TV eyeballs in Korea, other countries before their eyeballs in Australia. That's a philosophy thing. I don't personally agree with it. Don't think it's wrong. I don't think it's a wrong approach, but you and I talked about last week how important it is to grow the game locally, and you told the story about how you went with the kids to the ball game last week. It really should be the poster child of how this game is sold throughout the country and grow it to eventually a media market. But that's a long way to answer your question, Bob. I believe there would have been U.S. games regardless what happened, but not to the degree it was, because what happened was you suddenly had this opportunity and it was there and they took advantage of it. I think that was the good thing that the league did as far as that goes. So you want to back up on that, or anything you have to add with that?
Well, I was just going to say, looking at the schedule this weekend, Sunday's game, which would be Saturday night in the US. So Brisbane, Canberra scheduled for, this is Perth time, mind you, 10 a.m. So 8 p.m. in Dallas, 8 p.m. Central Time for the Brisbane Cavalry and the Aces Blue Sox as well. So a couple of US sort of primetime games on Sunday. There is also interestingly scheduled a Heat versus Adelaide game, 4 o'clock. The only game scheduled all weekend for those two is scheduled for Sunday, 4 o'clock. So we'll have to wait and see if that game happens or not. But it'd be interesting if they come in for a one-game series and
well,
you know, whether that's.
But does that? But you and I were talking about this before we came on. And this is our freelancing here. Let's just say this season, what happens to the bottom of the ladder? You know, who beats up on who? Let's just pretty much say that this is the way it's. Barring any major changes, I don't think the math's going to work. But Adelaide, it's going to be Melbourne, Perth, Adelaide, your top three.
Yeah.
The way the playoff scenario goes, 2 versus 3 play, and then 1 plays the winner of the play-in game. So it's not going to matter. All it's going to matter is who has which dugout in Melbourne next weekend. Will it be the home dugout for Perth, the home dugout for Adelaide? Those 2 teams are locked in. The only way it would change is if by chance, and I got to look at the standings here because I'm going to pull them up right now. These, for some reason, Major League Properties, Advanced Media did not update the standings overnight. I don't know why they didn't update the standings overnight. It doesn't make any sense unless it's a timeline thing. But I'm looking at the timeline. Melbourne's 17-8. That means, okay, so 1 game back is Perth in the loss column. The best they would finish, the worst they could finish would be 17 and 10. That's the worst they would finish. And I believe that winning percentage still would be, you're 3 above 5. Yeah, you'd still be slightly better. Is that right? Am I math correct? I got to figure this out.
Canberra's best percentage they can finish on is 500 if they win the next 3 games.
Right.
So they'll finish at 13.
Right.
Oh no, these are not updated. So Canberra currently at 9 and 13. So what have they got left? They've got 3 games left. So they're 10, 11, 12. So they can't finish above 500 now. Sydney now 5 and 6, I believe, if that hasn't been updated. So 6, 7, 8. So they could finish at 8 and 6, which is
I'm trying to.
We'll do some live calculations on the fly.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now because I've got if Melbourne was to get swept, they'd be at a 607 percentage at 17 and 10. So technically, if they'd still finish ahead of the Heat, who have a 571. So even getting swept. So basically what I'm saying to you is percentage-wise, you're not going to lose anything those top 3. So I guess my point is, what I'm circling back to with you is that, okay, if they were to play a game this weekend, it'd just be for the crowd and for the risk for Perth is they lost that game, they'd flip second and third, but you're not going to lose yourself in the ladder. You're still going to be one of the top 3 teams there because the best Canberra can do is put at 500, and the best. Let me pull that back up again. The best Sydney can do. They're now 5 and 6. They could be 7 and 6. They could be a game ahead. Is that what I've got? Yes, they could be a game above, but even then, a game above 500. They're not going to be the 3 games above 500 or the 2 games above 500 that Adelaide and Perth are. And then again, Canberra being at 500. So that's the best they can do. So yes, I guess what I'm coming back to is there's my dog going nuts. Sorry about that, folks.
Sydney could end up with a percentage of 571, I think.
Yes.
So
they could. But now what would they? And here's my question to you. I guess my question is, if that was to happen, they'd be 571. Perth would be 5. Would you award Sydney as a number 2 seed by virtue of only playing? Of course, they had the 14 games. They're counting the loss. They're counting the forfeited or whatever games you want to call it in the 14. What do you do then? I mean, what kind of mess you have on your hands then for a 1, 2, 3 seed?
Well, you have a big mess, don't you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
have a
saying,
real, and that's sort of where, and I guess that goes back to DV, what we've talked about all along. I think the integrity of playing for the Shield this year, like the Claxton Shield this year, right? Really, I mean, you have to hope that it's kind of Melbourne or Adelaide, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, like, you know, potentially one of those teams who have played a few games at least, and games against, you know, different folk. But that's the risk, I guess, that to me, that's still the risk that's in play, that someone can run away from nowhere and win the Shield, and then, you know, like, maybe that starts to cause a little angst amongst people. Because, I mean, if I'm the Aces and I lose the Shield to a team that's played 8 games this season, and, you know, you've gone and done the road trips and this and that, and done the hubs and done this,
and your body
I
of
mean,
work
I'm
shows one thing. I agree with you.
yeah.
It's
I mean,
tough. It's a tough one to swallow. Well,
I'm probably a little salty.
it's one of those age-old problems in sport. I mean, I'll use the NCAA basketball tournament where you have a top seed, a 1, 2, 3 seed, 4 seed maybe, who gets upset. And it doesn't happen much in a 1 versus 16, but there are so many 2s and 14s and 13 seeds that win. And you've had this great year, but you won 20 some odd games, and you've been top 10 in the country. And boom, in a one game, you lose a last second shot, and you're done and dusted, and all your body of work doesn't. And that's the risk, and that's what makes the excitement of these tournament style things, and it makes it so exciting. Back to the whole thing again. I don't think it's that big of a deal that the Heat and Adelaide play this weekend, because again, at worst case scenario, if Sydney swept Melbourne, they'd still be percentage points tied with the Heat, and you'd still have, you're going to have those 4 teams. It's not going to really change. Right now, that's who your 5 teams are. It's Canberra and Sydney that may be flip-flopped, and they have to play in the playing game anyway. But as long, that's the only thing. That's why I guess my point was, playing a 1 game against Adelaide one more time is not going to really tell you much more than what we already know. Those 2 teams are going to play next weekend anyway, barring any kind of freaky thing. They're going to play 2 versus 3 in Melbourne anyway.
Yep. And that's going to be an interesting game. And I'm actually really looking forward to this postseason, DV, because I think that there's so many potential storylines that can happen. I mean, again, like Melbourne could get rocked that first game against Sydney or Canberra, or and Perth, Adelaide. I think you like that is a real toss of the coin for that one game, because, like, while I'd like to sort of go, Perth starting pitching is better, which it is, there's also this ugly sort of elephant in the room that every time Dylan Unsworth's had a quality start, he's got no run support.
Yeah,
and
they're 1-4. They're 1-4 when he pitches. I mean, they're 1-4 when they're ace pitches.
So it's sort of, for me, it's like, I'm thinking, if I'm Adelaide, I'm rolling out. I like that sort of Newborn into Wilkins, into maybe even an Austin Ross, into a TBS sort of. I don't mind that in a one game little blitz. It's going to be interesting. But I think, but as the one knock I'd give an Adelaide, I think the deeper they go, the pitching might get a little exposed to a hard hitting Melbourne team or something along those lines.
Ethan says, asking you guys to know how the teams themselves feel about this. Are they upset about the unfairness schedules, or just happy playing? I think yes, and yes. I would think that there's. I mean, I've not spoken to anybody, but except for the folks in the West, on the record or off the record, either one. I have spoken off the record to 2 other folks. The general consensus I get, and you can chime in here too, because I think you have spoke to the folks in Perth last night before I did today, from obviously the opportunity to get fans, and that's the big thing. I think the league really wanted to get Sydney some home games this week, because they haven't had any home games. That was priority number 1. If nothing else this week was to get Sydney some home games there in Blacktown, I think that's what got the folks in Sydney pretty fired up. I think everybody feels a sense of relief that we're to this point. It's one more, one more week, and then we're going to be to this fun finality. That we'll be asking, like we're asking questions here, Ethan. what we think about it, but I think in general it's a feel of relief. It's like I said early on back in October. I talked about this in the American Association. I'm not a big fan of the Winnipeg Goldeyes. I've never have been. I like their people. I like their GM. I like their manager. I like their broadcaster. I'm just not a big fan. But this last year, if you'd have told me pick a team because Kansas City was not playing in the association, I said this over and over again. I didn't care who won the American Association. It could have been any of the teams that were playing, Winnipeg included. And some of the fans thought I was crazy for saying that, but because in 2020, what a rough year it was for sport and for health and lives and livelihood, and having myself had been affected by COVID in our own house, all the things that have gone up and down. I would like to see anyone be happy, and that includes the Winnipeg Goldeyes. And in this case, I'll use the ABL example. I don't think anybody is upset about who wins it. I think this is the one year. Yeah, you're a Brisbane person. You want the Bandits to win, but if they don't, it's a different year. You're just glad that somebody won it. And I'm kind of the same way this year. I want the Heat to win it. I'd love to see Adelaide win it. I have another problem with Melbourne winning it. I like all those. But whoever wins it this year, I'm not going to whinge about it and be upset because, again, it's from the whole veil of COVID and the whole 2020 mess it's been that if it's an opportunity for someone to be happy, then I want it to be that way. And I think that's kind of what a lot of the front office folks are saying. And then number two is mitigating the financial losses. That's also been the big thing in the back. Because, again, what we have is once we get through the season, we can take a breath. We have a season coming up still down the road, and we got seasons beyond that, we hope. And hopefully the damage has not been so bad that this thing doesn't recover. And that's something you and I have been concerned about, too. So I think even to kind of answer your question is I think it does a lot of emotions with this thing. I think the biggest thing is celebrate the game. I think in general, that's the impression I get from fans is that they want this thing to be celebrated for regardless of who wins.
Yeah, and I think you hit it now on the head, DB. I think every player I've spoken to is just they're pretty happy just to be playing the game, pretty happy to be playing baseball. I get the feeling, and I'm not 100%. This is not a take it to the bank thing. I get the feeling that there's starting to be some worry about what's going to happen in the US this year. I mean, it's not. I sort of, like whether it's spoke to a bunch of different local guys who are signed to major league teams or sort of signed to organizations and whatnot. Like I get the feeling, in all honesty, DV, do you see in the US? I mean, do you see come May full stadiums of people?
I got to tell you, in Kansas City, we're not sure yet. We expect to have crowds. We have not been given the 100% that's going to happen. I talked to our general manager, Jay Hendricks, at length 2 weeks ago when I was in Kansas City, and there's still some concern. In the American Association, for example, which announced great news today that King County, they're outside of Chicago, is joining the American Association. But you've got a situation with the border in Canada. Winnipeg is in Canada. It's in Manitoba. Granted, it's only 85, 90 miles inside, but it's got one of the major border crossings there in North America, and you can't get back and forth. And that was a problem last year. The Goldeyes had to play all their games on the road. There is some lingering things, and I don't know if you saw this, Major League Baseball, the powerful players union basically said, no, we're going to play our schedule as is. We're going to report to spring training as is. That still may not fly for different cities and different. I mean, obviously, the lay of the land in California is much different than the lay of the land in Florida, in all points in between. So there's all that going forward. There is still a buzz in the air about what will happen and how it will look this year. And I do know that the minor league players, the spring training has been pushed back. That's one reason the ABL could go a little further, a little longer, because Major League Baseball spring training is going to start on time, but you're not bringing your number one draft pick to MLB spring. Put it this way: in years past, you'll bring a top draft pick to give them a look with the big club during spring training. Those guys aren't going to get much give me looks because they want those guys as late as possible away from the big club. So they don't want how many outbreaks and all that. So to answer your question, the long answer is there's still a lot of lingering things. Schedules, for example, you've got the schedules have not all come out for any of these leagues yet because you've got the lingering effects of the pandemic. Plus, you've got the reshuffling of the deck in the minors with Major League Baseball taking over. So there's all that still. We don't have there's all that in the air. So I'm a little worried. And I will tell you this, and this is where I was saying, I believe we'll be fine for the ABL next year.
Yeah.
But what happens if restrictions and things crop up again? I mean, we're going to go, here we go again. So the long-term effects of this year will go on for more than 1 year. I mean, it's going to go on. It's not, you don't snap your fingers and say, okay, it's over with, we're going to be fine.
Yeah.
This could be on the docket for a couple of years, mate.
That's right. And I think that's where Brian brings up a good point there. And that's the thing. I think that's lost sometimes with the ABL is there has been a season, like it's been, it hasn't been perfect, but there has been a season. There's been baseball to watch, and I think that's, from my view, that's sort of that's probably the only. I think that's just something that's getting potentially in some of the players' thoughts right now is hey, I've signed with Miami, for argument's sake. Am I going to actually go? I'm not sure. I think that's that's probably the only lingering thoughts at the moment.
Sure. No doubt about it. Last night, too, let's get to the last night, we'll continue on this topic, too, because I want to get more into this. 12-5, classic Brisbane Bandits home ball game. One of those classic wins where a lot of home runs, a lot of runs. The bandbox is in full effect. I love going to Brisbane and calling games, partner, because it's like a video game atmosphere as a broadcaster, because literally every ball jumps off the bat, and they travel, and they traveled last night aplenty. 12-5 winner for the Bandits. How much did you see, and did you feel like I did? Classic Brisbane home game. 12 runs, 10 hits. How many long did they get? Hit 1, 2, 4 home runs. And you got to feel for Canberra. Canberra scores 5 runs on 9 hits and winds up losing, getting out the field there 12-5. But that's what happens. You go play Brisbane at their park. Those balls jump out of that yard, don't they?
They do, and it was interesting because I get sort of all the notifications. Sure, other people do as well. I get all the notifications come up on my phone about when runs have been scored and stuff. Would have been, I think it was the bottom of the 6th or 7th.
2 to Lutz.
Bandit scored 6 or something.
Fastball handed right.
I'm getting my phone just buzzing. I'm like, what's going on here? And it was just, but like it's one of those. It is, as you say, DV. It's a stadium that the ball travels. It's not the biggest stadium in the world. It's that sort of small stadium where home runs are your friend. It's got that sort of shorter porches in a way, and it's the only thing that bothered me about this game, I'll be honest with you, DV, is. And this is an aesthetic thing. What's going on with Brisbane's pants in those games? I mean, what? Like,
man, we're kind of like, we like to be uniform guys, right? We love the uniforms. I'm not a huge fan of the wide stripes, although I would like to probably see those with a white top with the wide stripe. I think that might be pretty cool, but I don't know if they have anything like that. I might sort of feel different about it if they had the pants definitely have it's like the Brewers and Cubs sort of got together and had pant babies, I guess. I mean, it's kind of what they've done. They are different, no doubt about it. By the way, good to see Donald Lutz do his thing too. But is my volume a little low? Sorry, folks. Let me bring it up a little bit.
I think you might have just disconnected, DV.
Did I?
I think you might have. I mean, I was watching that. Well, there you go. Yeah. I was sort of watching it, and I don't know. There was, for me, there was a time that, and I'll try to think. I'll try to remember who was pitching at the time, but it was. I want to say it was either for the Bandits. It was either could have been Aaron Brown, could have been Rick Teasley, but they had the jersey out and the baggy pajama pants, and I just thought. I mean, there's some of their kits are great, Brisbane, but those pants they're a miss for me, DV.
Yeah, Stuart's very thankful for you too. Uh, can you hear me? By the way, you hear me all fine? You guys hear me? Thumbs up. You hear me, Paul?
Yep.
Okay, you hear me, Paul? Paul, everybody hear me?
Good now.
The show is Talking Baseball Australia Live. Baseball's best made. Again, 12-5 last night. Classic Brisbane ball game. They're in the friendly confines there. It's the ball jumps out of it. It is what it is. But the thing is, the highlight video, watching those highlights, of course, watching the game, every ball looks like it's going a long, long way. And they are going a long way because I couldn't hit it out this day and age. But you got to remember that, yeah, it may be a blast, maybe on top of the roof, but it's, that's a ballpark where fly balls go to become home runs. And there are some, why they look like they're bombs. We got to remember those 395 and straight away, something like that. I mean, it's definitely there. Thank you very much, you guys checking in. But anyway, I love, it's a classic. When you watch a game in Brisbane as a fan, as a broadcaster online, expect some runs, expect the ball to jump, and that's what you got last night. Anyway, overall, that's the way things sit last night. Canberra and Brisbane there, and those four will be back at it tonight again as well. We play catch up here. Let's see here. Talk about Bob says the best view of American baseball is a thick fog. Yes, amen to that, Bob. No doubt about it. What's your thoughts when playing double headers with both games at 7 innings? Why they're changing things? It's sort of the. What's your thoughts on when playing double headers with both games at 7 innings? Why they changing things? Is it to the sweat? Go ahead, partner. I think you know the answer to that.
No, I think, like traditionally it was 7 and 9. They've gone 7 and 7 this year. I think part of it is from what I've been told is just like protecting pitching stocks from like obviously they didn't get to play last year, so they wanted to sort of prevent injury and whatnot. And that's probably the biggest part of it, from what I understand, is that they're just a little concerned with the lack of work that the guys got over American summer. So it's just kind of an opportunity. So they just don't want to get they don't want to tax people too hard on those double headers. I know your thoughts on double headers in general, DV, but it's
hate them. But I will say this with I've gotten used to the 7 inning games, double headers in the ABL. I don't like them. And my reasoning for not liking them are probably going to be something you're going to be people are going to go, what's he talking about? But in general, I've gotten used to them this year. I've I've welcomed them from a pitching standpoint, not taxing your arms. That's been a big part of it. I remember the main reason the 7 inning games were implemented in the first place was to appease the television situation in New Zealand and to squeeze it in a window. Let me give you why I don't like doubleheaders. And this is going to be probably from out of left field, but let's put our business caps on here. If you're playing a 4-game series and you're counting you're selling your merch, your snacks, your beers, all that, tickets. And if you're playing a doubleheader, it's 2 for 1. It's a great deal for the fan. But if you're doing 2 for 1 and you have a 4-game series and you're only playing over 3 days, you just chopped your legs out from underneath you by not playing a fourth gate. To me, the business model doesn't. Now, I understand why they do this. There's a lot of reasons why. For example, in the West State League and all that. But if you've got a 4-game schedule and you only play 20 home games a year, why would you ever not have a date? Why would you ever have a doubleheader gate instead of 1 gate? Does that make sense what I'm saying? Instead of playing 3 games in 4 days, play 4 games in 4 days. Now, yes, the cost may run into it, but if you're going to sell, let's just say, for example, I'm averaging 500 folks a game, let's just say. And so instead of having 500 on Thursday, I got 500 on Thursday, 500 on Friday, and then 500 on Saturday for the 2 doubleheaders. What if I can get 500 on Sunday? And all those sales I made on Saturday, I make on Sunday as well. So I just pick myself up an extra 15, 20% of income, interest, chance to be broadcast on a different day. And remember, there may be folks who work on Saturday who can't make it on a Sunday or whatever. And you're in the Australian Baseball League, you're playing, except for this year, you're playing on the best nights of the week. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Believe me, American Association or minor league teams in the States would love to play games only on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They got to play Tuesdays or Wednesdays, and those are tough sell. A Tuesday night in the minor leagues is a bitch of a sell to make. That's hard. When you get your schedule coming out, you look at it and go, God, we've got 10 Tuesdays. Oh, but we got 10 Saturdays and 10 Fridays. And so why would you ever take a 500-person gate and just chop it off your bottom line? Why would you do that? You don't want doubleheaders tax your pitching staff. They mess with your rotation for weeks. And these teams aren't built for that. So my coming to you is from an angle of business. Why would you ever play 4 dates in 3 days when you can play 4 dates in 4 days and get more bang? Increase the value for your ticket holders, your stakeholders, your advertisers. Why not do that? Why not turn maybe Sunday into the kids' day where all the kids get them for free? I mean, something along those lines. But why would you ever play a doubleheader on your best day? Why would you play a doubleheader on Saturday, which is your best throwing day? Why would you ever do that? On a Friday, why would you ever do that? You should have single games Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Now, I know I'm crazy, and people think I'm an idiot for saying this, but why would you chop off that income? And that's where I'm coming from. That's why I hate him. And also hate him for the reason it hurts your team from a competitive standpoint. But am I an idiot? Yeah, tell me I'm an idiot.
No, I think you're spot on. But and interesting, Bob says it as well. Like you sell an extra more hot dogs in 9 and 9 than 18 straight, and I think that's such call it the hot dog economy, which is, and this dates back to a friend of mine did this interesting business analysis, which he called the hot dog economy, which was back in 2015 when the Blue Jays made a real run for the postseason. And sort of at that trade deadline around July, they got real good. And they went from averaging like high 20s, say 30,000 a game, to 50,000 a game, like every game. And then it was the 20,000 hot dogs. I remember him doing this math around, it was something like 20,000 hot dogs, which I think it equivalated to an additional $80,000 in revenue per game. I think from memory, they played, I think there's 45 games at that level. So it was, anyway, it was an extra $3.6 million just in hot dog sales. And then you went hot dogs to beers to merch to all these things. So, I think you're spot on, DV. Broadcasts are beating from doubleheaders are beating from a broadcast standpoint as well. It's hard. It's hard. Those days when you got to call 2 games are just, they're tough games because it's like, and what the one thing I hate about doubleheaders the most, and we actually saw a couple of these 2 weeks ago. If your team gets tanked early in the first game, so if you're all of a sudden you're down 8-0 in the third, you start rolling out. That game quickly gets shelved, and it's like, well, we've got a game tonight. So, I mean, even though he did a good job, Jordan McArdle comes in to pitch or something like that, and all of a sudden it's just like you've got this game that one team is just kind of going, well, let's just shelve this game and move on. That's the one thing I don't like about doubleheaders, and I just don't like. From a broadcast point of view, I just don't like. I'd just rather call separate games. I just think it's and the DV, if it's a warm day or something, or if you're up there by yourself, it's a sack full of nickels.
It is. It's tough. I've done them on the road many a time by myself, and I'll just add and kind of close it on the whole topic is that the thing is that you only want double headers if the weather doesn't cooperate. But I can tell you now, any front office in baseball, when they get a rain out and you've got to do the next day double header, it's not something you want because, and the whole $9, the hot dog deal is a great example.
Yeah.
Folks, 14 innings of baseball, let's just say it's 9 and 7, 16 innings or 14. People do sort of come and go and lose interest. And it does wane off. And remember, you don't leave your beer sales on for all 14 innings. Because a lot of these states and these laws are, there's certain time limits how long the beer taps can be open. So you're also hurting your income there too. But when the worst thing is when I get to do a press release doubleheader tomorrow. Play 2 is the way you used to play before lights and all that, but you do not want it from business standpoint. So I'll just say that. Leverno in the first. Sell more hot dogs. Let me go back to Ethan here. By the way, Ethan, I'm going to give you I love your analogy about General Sam. By the way, what I was talking about earlier, the ABL is a lot like, if you know your Texas history, after the Alamo, General Sam basically ran from the Mexican army to San Jacinto, and he ran, and he would just retreated wars he was fighting. It turned out he retreated far enough, made a stand, and won Texas independence. So very good point, Ethan. By the way, you know your Texas independence. But one thing I think has been tremendous this year is the start of the baseball again podcast, Blue Sox podcast, any other podcast coming soon. Not that I know of.
There's the players podcast. There's the players podcast, which is pretty good. And we've sort of teased about going on and doing a podcast model, but this seems to be working for us right now. So we'll keep doing this for a while.
Guys, would people, and maybe I'll ask this question to the viewers: would you guys want to hear this audio? Because I can pull the audio and put it on the podcast form. If you guys wanted that, I'd be more than happy to do it. We kind of use this as a podcast. It is a podcast. It's a video podcast. It's a vlog or video vlog, whatever you call it. It's a video podcast. So you know what I'm saying. So if you guys want that, Stuart says interested that Cavs noted Lutz had asked for his release from camera. The team last night did nothing in the field about it, especially being so vocal about the release when it occurred. I don't. That whole situation, Stuart. And that's probably something we need to dive into a little bit more. Behind the scenes of that.
There's definitely some off-season specials happening about some storylines that don't quite make sense this year, and one of them is that. That's
a huge one, And I Donald Lutz. You guys know how I feel about that guy. That guy is a smiling face, always saying howdy. Great guy. That there's something there. What that is, I don't know, but yeah, it's a bit. It definitely is odd. Partner, one more thing too. This is for the Adelaide folks, and I think this is a good news thing. And the reason I say this, this young man right here, Mitch Newborn, signed a 2-year extension. Basically, what it boiled down to. First off, do you remember a time when we didn't even have anything but year-to-year deals? Guys just basically played the same team, just kind of on a gentleman's agreement. I think it's changed, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, Adelaide have done a great job to sign, this week to sign Newborn, Wingrove, Todd Van Stencil. Well, I think he signed the week before. Luke Wilkins. I think that's it for the 2-year deal. So, but look, Mitch Newborn, sort of had a bit of back and forth. And of course, the former Perth Heat guy, such a tremendous talent. I'm so happy for him in his dominant performance. I think he sort of had a little bit of a shaky outing in that double header the other day for the Giants, but he was tremendous. I'm wrapped, DV, that he signed for 2 years. I actually sent him a message just to say, congratulations on that, which he was, very much, his lines were sort of around that, he loves the organization, loves being there. He'll miss home, but at the same time, great to spread your wings. And I'm a big fan of Mitchie Newborn. If he can go on and do good things, I'd love to see him sign with even an association team or something over there. DV, I'd love to see him sign somewhere. I mean, of course, he's had a couple of Tommy John's surgeries, but I'm a big fan. I'd buy the jersey, DV.
You lead me to really what I wanted to bring up, and I'll get to that part of it in just a second. It was around third here. I think that is a good sign. You're seeing guys signing for 1-2-year deals. When we first started back in the day, again, it was a handshake. For example, I'll use the 12-13 Heat, my first year over in the West. Alan D. San Miguel was a Perth player, regardless. I don't know what the agreement was, but Luke Hughes is the Perth guy. They were heaters. That's what they were. And you'd go to Trent D'Antonio was a Blue Sox, whatever. Catalyst, whatever. You throw those names out. And I remember when D-San sort of when he wasn't the first, but wasn't
I think
Erasmus
Matt
was
Williams.
the first?
Nah,
Matt Williams was the
perfectly.
first.
Matt Williams was first. It went from
Okay,
Sydney
so
to Adelaide.
Matt Williams was Sydney to Adelaide. He was the first. But then it slowly, a little trickle, because I was like you, I couldn't understand how in the first year or so I was with the Heat, how guys didn't, you know what? I'm going to go play in Sydney because it's a better situation for me. Or Sydney, go play in Perth. But, whatever it may be, I was shocked that there was no free agency. What I love to see the evolution of the league now where there are 2 and 3 year deals. And that shows you as a fan that this thing has got a bright future once we get past this COVID mess that's been bringing everybody down. That bodes well for the future. If you're going to get players to say, yeah, I'm going to come back and I'm going to give you 2 more years in Adelaide or in a Canberra kid or whoever, that only shows you how this league has grown under Cam Vale and just how it's grown since you and I have been doing this. I think that's a real positive sign. Number 2 for Noonborn, you know what? Somebody needs to take a flyer on that guy. He's definitely going to be pitching for Team Australia. He definitely can pitch the American Association. He can definitely pitch somewhere in Korea or Japan. The kid can pitch, and he may be a late bloomer as far as with the surgeries and coming around. And sometimes a guy goes, and I'd love to ask him about this. Sometimes guys go through surgery, they kind of rethink the whole thing and become a pitcher as opposed to a thrower, and that might be happening too. But those are my thoughts on him. Glad to see him inked, and it's good to see all these guys, TVS as well, getting these longer deals. That bodes well for the league. And then Newborn, somebody sign this guy. Somebody sign this guy.
Yeah, but what I love about what Adelaide's done with those signing those guys, the local guys, DV, is if they get those really good players come through from the Phillies, all of a sudden they start having that core of Australian guys, which was always the recipe, which has always been the recipe, even in Melbourne last year's champions, having those core return guys and then just insert big guys. But GM, love your thinking. Look, I'd love to know. I'd love the league more than anything. I'd love the league to. I mean, I think the deal this year, in terms of the Fox, in terms of the KO Sports and the Fox Sports. I mean, it's certainly. It's certainly. I've got a lot more messages this year from people who have stumbled across baseball watching it on Fox Sports than probably on Facebook and YouTube that they ever had before. So, that's a separate topic altogether. Broadcast. We're gonna have a 4-hour show about that when we probably will one day. But it's
we will do an off-season show because we have some very hot opinions about that. It's what we do. Let's see your question. Do you think Auckland will have a hard time getting guys like McCardle and Walker back next year after they left them in the lurch? I don't know how that is going to work. Let me give you what I think should happen, and it doesn't mean it's going to happen. My guess is, and this was never announced, and I see Tonks out there, he might know more. My guess is this happened, I get the feeling that a lot of these guys, their property would revert back to where they were going to be before. I don't know if there's a gentleman's agreement on that. I don't know how that would work, but I have a feeling that somewhere there's going to be a way back for those guys if they want to go back to where they were supposed to go in the first place. That was a total mess. We all know this. I know, for example, I use the association as an example always, but those players who played for other teams last year are now back with Kansas City. Some of them have gone on other teams, but they had their rights reverted back to KC, who chose to release them or sign them, whatever.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be a little bit of that, but I've not heard officially one way or the other, though, Ethan, to be honest with you.
And that's an interesting point. I don't know. We'll have to find out the clarity of that. What happened with those contracts? Because I mean, they're not to forget those guys on screen as well. Don't forget Dylan Unsworth as well, originally signed with the Tuatara as well. So there's, that they will be back. You would think, you would think by at least. By by the time you're rolling in November, you would assume that all of Australia and New Zealand would have been vaccinated. Majority of the US would have been vaccinated. You would assume that by November, Australia and New Zealand should be okay. But again, who knows anymore, DV? But you would assume things would be okay. But that makes it another fascinating question of what happens there. But
Let me give you guys the graphic here. This is you can't really see it. Dadgummit. The league did announce. Tonk's right on it. And as I assumed, it made sense.
Yeah.
Guys go back to their teams. They just needed them. Yes, there you go. There's your answer right there. That if anybody knows the legendary Shane Tonkin would know. Thanks, mate. Appreciate you. That's what we assumed. And it was never said, but it was implied. I got the impression it was implied that those guys were kind of on a Lend-Lease sort of deal, if you will.
Yeah.
But majority of them, that is. Now, granted, and here's the deal. And he's right. I'll use a great example. Kansas City had a kid, Dylan Tice, big fat, love the guy. He came back from after playing Milwaukee, but then Kansas City decided, well, we're going to go a different direction and facilitated a move to Fargo for him. And there's also those things happen. So, you get that player back, then you can kind of, okay, we can help this guy go somewhere else too. That also the way it worked as well. So anyway, interesting stuff, but let me get this off the screen here. Sorry about that. I got some reason. Quit it, Google. Stop it. There we go. Sorry about that. Majority of me says, I want to get to that. I don't know if you guys can see this.
But the league screen for us, Stevie.
Let me pull the full screen for you guys. I'll go ahead and talk over it. They're going to be a women's showcase that I'm so excited about. Sorry about that. That'll be on Sunday. This is the postseason pairings here. 11 through 14 Feb. Happy Valentine's Day for you folks in Victoria that day. 4 versus 5 on the 9th. That'll be to be determined game time. At the moment, that's going to be your Sydney and Canberra Brisbane combo right there. 1 would be Melbourne playing the winner of the wild card game. 2-3 right now would be Perth and Adelaide. And then you've got that the bottom, the elimination final. The loser of the semifinals game and the loser of of those 2 games. Semifinals games, those folks play again to stay alive. And they basically, you see how it works. It's the College World Series style. Basically, what it works out is you basically got to win 3 to win it all, and you do go to the losers bracket, but you win your way back through it again, and it will wrap up with a grand final on the 14th of Feb there in Victoria, and exciting stuff. I like the format. It's not something I want to do every year. In professional baseball, I prefer the best of series, but making the most of our opportunity and having seen College World Series baseball up close. It's pretty cool the way the College World Series is set up. It's basically set up. It's basically like that. They do a little bit of pool play first. They kind of reseed teams, but that's what you're doing kind of a College World Series style. That's delicious. That Perth Adelaide. I mean, that could be a couple really good games and some real high drama created with that format.
Oh, I love it, and what's more romantic, DV, than spending Valentine's Day at the ABL Championship Series? I mean, there is few things that could be more romantic, and then which Tonks just tunes in as well with the women's showcase Saturday and Sunday 11 a.m. It'll be Victorian Aces and Brisbane Bandits on Fox and KO, which is awesome. That's as well.
Cool.
And of course they had that planned. They had that planned in the hubs and never happened. And that's awesome as well. That's such a great. Exactly that opportunity, the little festival of baseball to sort of crown the champion. And DB, I'll put you on the spot right now. You're looking at that playoff roster. You got you're the engraver, and you have to engrave onto the Claxton Shield. As of right now, what name are you putting on there?
Let's go ahead and pencil in the Melbourne Aces. Don't see why not until somebody knocks them off. I do believe there'll be some high drama. My crystal ball is I think the Heat have the best pitching staff, by far the best pitching staff. Adelaide probably has the most upside as far as what they could do when they're really all clicking. Sydney is such a wild card to me. I mean, remember we talked about their lineup, and Gibson, for example, a guy we haven't even talked about, but Kirk Gibson, his son's there. They had some exciting offseason signings besides Manny. Manny was just the headline. They had some exciting pieces in the puzzle that we haven't really seen enough of them yet. So they kind of lurk in the weeds. It really has a lot of delicious storylines. And I can tell you, Melbourne, Perth, Adelaide, those three would not shock me, even those three going through. But I still think until you knock off the Aces and how deep they are, not saying it can't happen, but I'm going. What about you? Am I alone here?
Well, I mean, the one thing, like Lachlan Wells last night, tossing 4 innings, 3 hits, and then there's something about Sydney. I don't think they can do it, but like you're right, DV. There's just some sort of wild card in there. Look, for me, I think if the Heat can generate offense, I think they win. In my opinion, I think their pitching is so strong. I think their pitching is ahead of anyone else's, but they've got an issue scoring runs. But if they can score runs and not make errors, I think that they're. But I'm sort of with you. I think right now Melbourne. Melbourne probably haven't been knocked off yet. Look, and Adelaide, when Adelaide's one game scenario is executed flawlessly, DV, it works perfectly. So I don't know. I will go out though on a limb and I will back the team I broadcast for. I think the Heat are going to be good enough to win, in my opinion. But
in this year. Wouldn't it be crazy though to have, and this is what this whole format offers us.
Yeah.
Someone come and again, so we talked about the NCAA tournament. There's always that Cinderella that kind of comes from, it's the old adage of once you get there, you got a chance, and you're there, you got a chance. I think the delicious storyline would be for something like that to happen. If it goes to form, I'm fine with that too, because it should. Yeah. It's set up to go to form, but if it doesn't go to form, I think it creates a delicious opportunity for a lot of folks. And again, I'm not going to be upset whoever wins. And this is, like I said before, 2020, 21. I just want somebody to win and somebody to celebrate something, whether it be a Claxton Shield or the Team Spencer Cup or the Talking Baseball Australia Cup, whatever. I mean, just glad folks are able to. Yeah, it's a
Fiasco Flask.
Fiasco Flask. I'm just glad we're having a chance to celebrate that. But yeah, and here's the thing too, there's still baseball to be played this weekend. So even we talked about earlier, Perth and Adelaide pretty much sit in the wings. That those guys are playing those other series. That Brisbane, Canberra, Sydney. Well, even though Melbourne's pretty much sit pretty, those games don't matter. And and don't count off one thing that if I went back and looked at the schedule earlier. And you look at that schedule. Look for example, look at Adelaide, Brisbane, Perth schedule. Go back to last month, what these teams have been through. I don't think of any team that I've associated with that I've ever known, except for maybe the barnstorming team, the Solana Stockade a few years ago in the association, who have been through the schedules they've been to. I mean, Brisbane's got something like they 18 games in 17 days. That's that again. Your pitching staffs and rosters aren't built for that. You need an off day. I mean, people kind of joke about the off day. What are you going to do on the off day? Well, a lot of times, some of the best responses I've had from managers is do absolutely nothing. It's an off day. Guys, stay home. So you think about that. So again, this weekend's big for Brisbane. It's big for Canberra. It's big for Melbourne. It's big for everybody. But the biggest thing is that's going to get through this weekend series for sure, and that's a big plus as well. So kind of a final thought there from me. Yeah, baseball will be the winner. Exactly. I'm kind of catching up here, but Drew Anderson really hurt the ace in the playoffs. Yeah, and we didn't mention that. I did mention Anderson. He's reporting to the Rangers spring training, I believe, because again, that's all going to start on time, which we thought a week ago wasn't, but it's going to. Baseball will be the big winner, Shane, no doubt about it. I saw a picture of Darren Downs' championship ring, absolutely gorgeous and pleasant. And that's something really cool. I should have put this up. Lars Lagoria, mate of mine, former ace, he's still an ace, still part of the family, tweeted a really cool picture of his championship ring from last year. And I love what the ABL team's doing. We've seen Perth do it. Brisbane really big with this when they were winning championships. All these teams are big about celebrating their championship and keeping that jewelry in the family and showing that off. I think it's really cool. But those championship rings are pretty sharp, and you get one. They don't come all the time, and when you get one, it's pretty special. So pretty cool to see that. Any final comments, my friend? we kind of dog paddled through this one without really much of a life preserver and got through it unscathed, but some really good stuff, really good stuff.
Well, and who knows? Maybe there's a game this week in Perth. Maybe there's not. Who knows? So we'll.
There are games in Brisbane. There are games in Sydney, and if you're in those two places, check them out.
Sydney,
I'll be
especially,
watching.
I think, DV. We talked about that earlier. I think if you're in Sydney, if you're around Sydney, like get to the game. I mean, they've had a real rough time of it, and to get 450 odd last night, they need to show up. We need to see folks show up there in Sydney.
Double that tonight and get rolling. And again, wishing everybody a great baseball weekend, my friend. We'll be talking postseason ball next week, won't we?
We will. We'll be talking. We'll be looking forward to it. Appreciate everyone's company. Thanks, DV. Awesome stuff. Good baseball weekend.
Yeah, good baseball weekend. There he goes, Paul Morgan, my broadcast partner. Closing here, of course, you can find us on Facebook, which you're watching us now. Also, we'll be back on normal time next week. We'll get eventually, we're not going to do it just yet. We're going to eventually get to the back to the guest-driven thing at some point. I did take your feedback today on the whole podcast thing. What I will do is I will pull the audio of this tomorrow for you. I will not do it tonight because I've got a conference call in Australia. Then I've got a church thing afterwards on Zoom as well, which I'm hosting and leading, which, oh well. But we will put that up tomorrow, and I'll do it. We'll put it on our SoundCloud. We put some of our stuff before, so we'll do that there for you guys. I know y'all like the podcast style. But crazy times for sure, but exciting times as well. And I'm looking forward to this big final weekend of the ABL, and looking forward to our show next week. And next week, 7 a.m. in the West, we'll kind of dissect it all. We'll tell you how the postseason shapes up. We'll give you our expert insight. What we'll learn this weekend, I think we'll learn a lot more. And again, there's still a lot of baseball to be played in those locales as well. Big thanks to let's see here. Great show. Be bet. Thanks. Appreciate it as well. Ethan and Nick. Ethan, I appreciate your Sam Houston comments. As a Texan, I understand that. Sort of something like that. Yeah, Bob, it's a church thing, but yeah, it's a men's group. Actually, it's a men's group doing, you know what? I'll tell you about this. I don't mind saying this. It's not really my platform normally, but we're reading a book called Oneness Embraced. It's a book by Tony Evans, who is a African-American writer, radio host in the States, and it's about building bridges and racial reconciliation, something I very firmly believe in. So anyway, that's what I'll be doing later on. Anyway, that's it. Glad you guys joined us. We have our calls. The pin will come from this show as well. All that and more. Have a great rest of your weekend, a great baseball weekend. You folks in Brisbane, you folks in Sydney, rock it, roll it. We're all behind you, all behind you talking baseball Australia. And, of course, for my broadcast partner, Paul Morgan, who is the best. Much love to you guys. I say it every time. Let's be better tomorrow than we were today. Let's be better fans tomorrow, better fans of our game. Just keep showing love. Virtual hugs, everybody. Hashtag much love. Let's keep fighting on, and we will see you guys down the road and let you guys go. Okay, let's put the old close up. Let's roll it in 3, 2, 1. Love y'all. See y'all next week on Talking Baseball Australia Live. Baseball's best mate.
Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever get back for its root. Root for the